We are one of the smallest companies with what we do. We've been very successful at it, and the plan right now is still continue that path, organically grow, and if other opportunities come along, we're always looking to see what happens there.
Just a quick reminder for you to like, subscribe, and rate this podcast so we can get your feedback and know how to make it better.
Hey, it's Ari. Welcome to another episode of the Made in America podcast. Today, I'm with Kim Bowen, CEO of Specialty Cable Corp. Kim, thank you so much for coming on today.
Well, thanks for the invite. I'm happy to be here.
Kim, it's the Made in America podcast, so we start off with the same two questions, my man. What do you make? And why do you make it?
We make insulated wire and cable, and we make it because every product needs an interconnect to make it work.
Every electrical product, that's for sure,
That's right? Exactly.
So I don't know that people fully appreciate either how much goes into cabling, what it's really used for, maybe even surprised that it's stuff like that's made here in Connecticut. So just for those that don't know, and maybe to educate some who maybe know a little bit, like kind of help us understand what is it about the cabling that you guys do? What is specialty cable? Like, why are these cables so important? Maybe just give us a little bit of that.
Sure. There are certain products that we do. It's a lot of it's high temperature wire and cable. So to make a wire and cable that withstands heat of an aircraft engine or an appliance, you need certain materials. So Teflon or PTFE is an excellent insulator. So a lot of our products will be made between a PTFE tape or a PTFE powder that converts into an insulated wire, and we would convert that like clay in a kiln. So you put the clay in, and it transforms out to like a pot, and it's very similar to wire and cable. We would put in as a PTFE powder. We would compress it, and then we would cure it through about a bank of 1,000 degree ovens.
Oh.
And then, yes. And then it transferred into a solid mass. So, which is very strong and it can withstand up to 2,000 degrees for when you're in a hazardous application.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people see all these different machines working, but maybe don't take the time to think about how you get all the different components to talk to each other, right? Like the nerves in our body, we need the wires in the machines. So what do your cables go into typically? Like, what are the applications for the cable you guys make?
A lot of our products, they can go into audio cables, high-end audio cables, which are very cool. They also go into medical cables. Those are low temperature.
For what?
Well, one of my favorite products is it's a baby defibrillator cables. So there are two single wires. One is pink and one is blue, and you twist them together, and then they would put connectors on them to connect to, the apparatuses on each end of it.
And so that's using like a defibrillator for like little kids?
Yes, yeah, and heart monitors. Heart monitors. So I actually seen that in a medical show at the Javits Center. So we make it, and it's very hard sometimes to see your products in place because they are industrial products. So I was at a show at the Javits Center just walking through, and all of a sudden I looked down on the table, and there was our wire. And I looked and I saw, that's our customer. So I had to say, hey, we make this for you. So that was very cool.
Yeah, it's also got to be kind of interesting, right? Because in most cases, you don't want the wire showing, right?
Right, exactly.
I mean, cable management, wire management, sort of hiding that's like an art in and of itself, right? So it must make it even that much harder to see these critical products that you guys make.
Absolutely. To that point, we also make aerospace wire and cable. So pretty much from the tip to the end, our wire could be through. And for every manufacturer, most likely our cable is in there somewhere.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. We make very high, very large cables for power cables for an aircraft, but also instrumentation cables. So they can be all throughout the cockpit and through the floors for the entertainment systems.
Oh, really?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
So all those seatback TVs and all that. Specialty Cable Corp connecting all those up.
It could be be our cable. That's for sure. That is for sure. So we do make it. So it has to go somewhere.
It has to go somewhere. Yeah. So do you, so then, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, no. Just to the point of trying to find your wire and cable and what you make. Every wire has a cage code, which is your identifier that's printed on the wire. And it's very difficult to find your product in service, especially in an aircraft. And it took me to go to the Australian Air Show, the Avalon Air Show, and walking around the airfields. And then there was a Cessna. And there was a Cessna that they were showing off, and they had the engine compartment open. And I asked, "Can I look in there?" And the guy says, "Sure." So I went in and looked in the engine compartment, and there was our cage code, 60685. I'm like, that's our product. I had to go to the other side of the world to see our product in service.
Oh, that's really cool, though. That must be super fun, though. Like, you kind of look in, find it. That's kind of neat.
That was super fun. So
nice. So I definitely want to talk about Specialty Cable Corp and kind of what you guys are up to. But let's kind of get a little bit of your background. So CEO of the business, let's kind of talk about that. How long you've been with them? How'd you get to be CEO?
No, I started out with the company in January 3rd, 2000. So first day of the new millennium.
There you go.
It's easy to remember.
That is easy to remember.
And I joined the company as their VP of finance at the time. And then after 4 years, I left for about 2 years and was kind of called back to come in to say, hey, we have an opening in manufacturing. So I said, oh, let me, so I came back and I joined a company in manufacturing and then became the CEO maybe 3 years later. And
so had you always been in finance prior to that opportunity to go into manufacturing? Were you always in the finance end of the business?
Yes, I've always been in the finance. I mean, in every role that I've had. So when I did get the call back to Specialty Cable to run manufacturing, I did tell my wife saying, listen, no one in their right mind would ever want an accountant to run their manufacturing facility. So I need to take the opportunity and see if we can make it work. But be prepared, I could be out of a job in 6 months.
Turns out you got a promotion, not out of a job.
Exactly.
So talk about that transition. That's really interesting. So, I mean, do you have a finance background? Did you go to school for accounting and finance type of thing?
Yeah. So I went to school for accounting, and I did that for years in a few different companies.
Were you like public accounting, or were you doing always in-house accounting?
In-house accounting. I didn't want to go into public accounting.
Okay.
So that was
so you were right. So that was out. Not doing that.
And my wife is a public accountant. So I was like, I don't want to do that.
Divide and conquer. And were you always doing finance in manufacturing from the early part of your career?
Pretty much. I was also in fine art publishing, so which is different than manufacturing with limited edition fine art prints.
Oh, wow.
And I did that for a bit. And actually, that's where I left, especially the first time to go back as their COO and kind of get into a different aspect than not only finance, but also marketing and sales, more operational stuff.
So it sounds like you maybe were always interested in beyond just the financial aspect, right? Because I mean, you didn't go into public accounting. You wanted to be, I imagine, because you wanted to be more tied closer to the business itself and what the business was doing. Is that?
Absolutely. I went to a technical high school for electrical, but decided I don't want to be an electrician. My brother was one.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
And I worked with him for a few years. I'm like, all right, I'm not sure about this. So pretty much I did have a hands-on, bent to me from there. So when I did come into manufacturing, all manufacturing is pretty cool. So when I was able to get closer to it, I really, pretty much became a little more passionate about it than from just the financial part of it. So it's been a great move, though, because it's kind of like everyone has their own pieces, and it's like everyone knows finance, and you can be really great at it, or you may know manufacturing and be great at it. But for me, I was able to kind of put them all together, which really helped in decision-making on everyday decision-making, because there's always a financial role of part of operations, and there's always an operational part of finance. So
that's right.
It's able to see a little bit of both of those.
So talk about sort of that transition out of, because sometimes the finance teams really get accused of everything comes down to a spreadsheet. Decisions are made on a spreadsheet, and things that can look good on a spreadsheet maybe don't play out like that on the factory floor or out in the field. So how did you think about that? How was that transition from sort of bean counter, if I can use that term,
Sure.
to kind of somebody that actually has to get something done, you know?
Yes. My transition for that and the aha moment was when we were working on certain jobs that in our on-time delivery on a certain segment of our business was poor. So we had to put a lot of overtime in there, a lot of resources to get it done, and it was a very low margin product. I mean,
Before you had to do all this work?
Absolutely.
Oh no, that's not good. That's not good.
So the accounting side and the financial side was like, what are we spending more resources on this product to get it out of here when we're going to be losing money on this product for whatever reason at the time, until finally it was like, wait a second, that's not my job. My job is to get it out the door. So I was able to make that transition and say, once it was out, things got cleaned up and we were all good to go. But the transition from finance to accounting, I think that's where I got all my gray hairs from, just making that transition. But it was great. I mean, it was a great opportunity. So I still appreciate it today that I was able to get the opportunity to kind of go from one career into a totally different career path. It was interesting, that's for sure.
What were, like, when you made that transition, you must have had expectations of what it was going to be like. What were some of the things that you thought to yourself, this is going to be easy, that were really, really hard, or things that you thought were going to be really hard that actually, no, that part of it came pretty easy?
Well, I went from managing a few people to managing a lot of people, and there was a very different style of management that goes for like in administrative and financial management to operations management. So that was a real big transition from that one style to another style that I had to learn. And
bigger challenge than you expected it was
much bigger challenge than I expected, because I felt like I was a pretty good manager. I kind of know how to do
this. The people part, I'm going to have to learn. The technical stuff, I'm going to have to figure it out. I don't know how all these machines work, the ovens, the lathes, whatever it is that we need. But the people part I got. Turns out not so much.
Turns out not so much, yeah. So, but again, very good team at the company, good managers and mid-level managers that really helped that transition for me.
Do you think was part of the challenge there that when you're in the sort of the back office, especially in the finance, there's a lot of similarities in background, somewhat similar in work? I mean, obviously AP and AR and invoicing and, and maybe budgeting and auditing, those are all different, but they're all sort of plays off very similar stuff. Whereas in operations, receiving has very little to do with like setup, has very little to do with, all the other aspects. Was that part of the challenge?
Oh, absolutely. You got it. There's certain aspects that were easier, like inventory. Inventory was kind of easy because, we have to account for all those assets. So
you could do that in a spreadsheet. So it's like home again.
You got it. Very, very similar relationship. So the great thing about it, at least at Specialty Cable anyway, is that the company, it's a mid-sized company, but we have 65,000 square feet. So it's still small enough to be at one end of the building and the other end of the building at any given day, multiple times a day. So it wasn't that you were stuck in the back office, that you were always in the shop. You knew all the people's names. So it made that easier. Again, I wasn't going that long. So most of the people were still there. So you kind of knew the personalities already, and you knew that, the people and how long they were there, and the different people's expertises that whether I haven't experienced them, you just know about them. So you knew right off the bat going, okay, I need to rely on a lot of people right now. And you going in there, because I was there before, I was able to learn who to rely on quickly to help me transition through.
The knowledge of the business and the people kind of made it a little bit easier.
Exactly. Yeah. If I didn't work there before and have the knowledge from at least even from the different viewpoint of finance, I'm sure it would have been a lot harder. But I did know the materials, the products, the location, the touch.
Do you think that the gap in time, just an interesting point, that having left for a bit and then came back, did that make it a little bit easier to not sort of keep getting sucked back into your quote old job, where had you just moved right over, maybe it would have been harder to make the transition? The fact that you were sort of gone and came in fresh, not going right from finance in, do you think that helped?
Oh, I know that it helped for sure.
Oh, you did?
I think if I stayed there, one, I probably wouldn't have been able to make that transition, just because there wasn't a separation. You know, you're kind of you have your role, and it's again like I started off in saying, who in their right mind would hire an accountant to run manufacturing? I don't know if I could do it today, even if I looked at my own background.
Right.
You know, so by separating, I said for a year or two, I did learn a lot more different things. You know, that kind of helped me prepare to get back into, you know, specialty cable and operations and more. So,
How did the opportunity to go from operations to like CEO, how did that sort of transpire?
There was an opening, and we did have a person that was in charge, and the owner of the company was looking to, who was, you know, involved at the time, you know, not 100%, but still involved. He was looking to kind of separate much more. So he was looking for someone to kind of take over. So it gave the opportunity for me was actually pretty good because I did have the financial side of it, did have the operations side of it. And with that, you kind of touch with the, you know, marketing and sales also, especially from there. So that was an easier transition, I think, just because, you know everything underneath it already. So
I was going to say, what's interesting is the jump maybe from finance to ops is a tough one to make.
That's a tough
one. But
one.
if you can make the jump, the jump from an experienced finance leader with a good, successful operations leadership background is like the perfect transition into becoming CEO. So it's an interesting kind of like weird transition. But then the first jump may be hard. The second one actually seems somewhat natural.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, it certainly worked out.
It certainly worked out.
What on the, you mentioned on the sales side, like oftentimes I think people think about, I've got two questions, but oftentimes people think of the CEO as really being like the face of the company, helping to manage big time customer relationships, really being out, the person who's got to be out in the market, kind of feeling out where the market's going to make sure that as pivots are needed or new product lines or whatever, that the company understands where it needs to go, as opposed to maybe the operational leader who's making sure we're optimizing what we're doing today. But interestingly, a lot of times people with a finance background aren't the most gregarious people that want to be out, being the face of the company. How have you found that? Well, you're here, so I guess you like being out there.
Well, I was going to say, as you can tell, I'm not that gregarious.
Well, charismatic. I don't know about gregarious, but definitely you're charismatic.
So I certainly, I do my best. It's like you said, it's not the natural, part of life that comes through. So there's a little more work for it to make it happen. But again, we do have some good people there. Again, there are other people. Our vice president of sales has been in the business forever. He's been out a lot. We travel together, so it's a nice team approach. Mm-hmm. So if there are any issues for us anyway, that if I falter in my public speaking skills, he certainly makes up for me for sure. So Mr. Streifel does a nice job.
Listen, you can't be great at everything. But,
exactly.
You got a warmth about you. I bet a lot of people kind of gravitate towards.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that.
Did you take over as CEO from the owner? Is that what you?
Yes.
Whoa. Mm-hmm. How was that?
It's always fun. He's still involved today. So actually, I have daily calls with him.
Okay.
To go from there. But again, it wasn't that difficult per se, because again, I had worked with him for a while already, and I do know the different parts of the business, and I would report to him anyway. Right,
he has comfort level.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sometimes I've seen owners of businesses struggle to find a way to get out. And look, if you want someone to be successful, you're going to have to trust them to get it done. And it's going to be a new role for them. So inevitably there's going to be mistakes. Listen, I'm sure he made mistakes too. Everyone does, but it's easier to make them a lot of times when you're the one who's still in charge to fix them.
That's right.
And sometimes letting go, it can be really difficult. We've seen it, a ton of time in transitions in family businesses where, the parents want to hand it over, but then don't actually ever get uninvolved, and it becomes a challenge. But it seems like you guys have navigated the waters well. What do you attribute the success to?
I think the success is he's Carl Shanahan is his name, and he's a great guy, very astute to business in his many years and different ventures. So I think he's been able to kind of come in and assess things sometimes very quickly, sometimes too quickly for me. He says, you can't do that. I was like, what do you mean? But again, it works well. So I always value his opinion, and he's welcome to have, I hate to say argue. It's not really the right term, but discuss the topics to just come up with the best way of doing anything. So there's a nice working relationship there to kind of come up with the best result, whatever that may be. So that's always helps.
Yeah, listen, absolutely. If you can check your ego at the door, now both people got to be able to do it. To say, hey, let's come in here and have a free flow of ideas, and let's let the best idea win wherever that idea comes from. That usually does get to the best result.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what we strive to do. And sometimes it works.
Hopefully more often than
exactly
it doesn't work, right? That's the key. Not for perfection, just some good balance, right?
You got it.
So, I mean, the company's been around, since the 40s or so?
Yeah, since 1942 as Revere Manufacturing. And that was also located in Wallingford. I think a Walmart sits now on the
original site.
Yes, okay. Exactly. But it has gone through some different ownerships. But the building that we're in now was created in the 1970s for wire and cable. So it looks like a red ski sloped building. As I mentioned before, that we have banks of ovens, and they're vertical ovens. So you can have 35 to 40 feet high ovens that go up, so the wire will go up there and then kind of come down the other bank of ovens. So you do have that thing. So it's an interesting looking building itself.
But purpose made.
Purpose made, exactly.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, but it was owned at one point by Pirelli Wire and Cable, and then Specialty Cable started in 1986 as it stands right now. You got it.
So businesses for that long, I imagine you guys have got some people that have been around to see some stuff. Do you guys have some long tenured employees?
We do. Actually, we had a lot of tenured employees, and when COVID hit, though, a lot of people decided, it's time for me to retire. Yeah. So we did have a lot of our long-term employees retire at that time, but we still have some people there. We have one person who's now in his 80s, and he started out at Specialty Cable when it was Revere Manufacturing down on Route 5. Yes, indeed. And he still works there today. So now he works part-time so he can go on his cruises. Right. He likes to go on. He's a great guy, excellent attitude, and he's the epitome.
How long has he been at the company?
Since 1950. He started when he was 17.
No kidding.
And now he's in his 80s. So
it's like almost 70 years.
Exactly.
That's unbelievable.
Yes, and he's a great guy, great attitude still. He's excellent person.
Yeah. Is it? You mentioned a lot of tenured people. I know there's been a lot of people that looked at COVID and said, all right, now's the time. What is it about the culture or the company that you think gets people to want to stay around for, maybe not everyone's going to stay for 70 years, but to get people to want to stay around for a really long time, in the business, what do you attribute that to? I
think, one, it is a smaller company, so you do have a family atmosphere. You get to know everyone really well, so you understand everyone's personalities and their interrelationships, and everyone can have a bad day and a good day, and you can let that go by. Again, we're flexible. We try to keep people engaged all the time. So whether we try to promote from within, and if we can't promote from within, we try to cross-train people within departments just to keep everyone stimulated and fresh and knowledgeable. And since I just talked to 2 new hires yesterday, saying knowledge is power. The more you know about your product, the more you're going to enjoy it, and the better job you're going to do, and the more appreciation you're going to have for what you do every day. So we try to do that on a consistent basis. So it seems to have been working. So
yeah, it certainly does. Look, 70, 75 employees is not. It's not big, obviously, or huge, but it's certainly not tiny, right? Big enough to sort of be able to feel like you have a place and see a career, because you got to be growing if you're going to keep people for a long time.
Right, exactly. Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about how you guys sort of stay relevant and fresh. Obviously cable's really important, but it's also been around for a really long time. How do you guys think about keeping the business fresh, the process fresh, so that you can stay relevant in the market and, avoid overseas competition or other cheap competition that may try and come in and knock you guys off?
Well, some of the things we've done, a lot of our products are military specification products. So you have to be qualified to make them. So you have to be QPL'd or have a qualified product listing, which we are qualified for.
Cage codes, QPLs, we got it all.
All that fun stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
A lot of great acronyms that we can put on there. So we do have a lot of different military specification products that we can make. Many of them stay the same, and as new ones come up, we get qualified for them. So we try to stay relevant with the new products. We received a new set of QPLs a few years ago, which are in all the aircraft today. With a lot of the new aircrafts, they have all new engines because of fuel efficiency and LEAP engines. That a lot of them take new wiring, so we get qualified for those. So we stay relevant to try to keep up with the new aircraft as they come along. And with that, we used to use a lot of our machinery equipment. Some of it is from the 1940s still. And we still have them that we actually just converted over. A lot of times you can, tear out the inside controls and replace them with all PLCs, but still keep the same chassis that it's on and make them current. Some of the new products, though, like even on your show, you've mentioned cars sometimes, how a Model T and from other ones. So, but you can only take a Model T no matter what you do with it. It can't make the new products. So we've invested in some new machinery equipment, especially our tape wrapping machines. I think some of our products here that are very small and you need very tight tolerance. I call it light and tight. It's lightweight and tight tolerance that the new machinery is needed. So we've invested a lot in that, and which runs very different than our other machinery that we have. But that's how we do it. We stay relevant with the products that are needed for today.
How do you? So I want to take those into pieces. So I'll just dig into it a little bit. You talked about staying relevant on some of the new products. So, I mean, how do you think about, or how do you stay in touch with? Is it your customer? Is it the end user? Like, who are you thinking about being in touch with to make sure that as they're creating the new engines, that specialty cable is the one that's able to figure out how to be the cable that's on there, as opposed to finding out after the fact, oh, there's a new engine coming out and they got new cables, and guess what? Knockoff cable guy down the street is getting the gig.
Well, the great thing with aerospace, you usually can't have the knockoff guy. That's always a great thing. Or
knockoff gal, let's not.
Yes, or gal, either a knockoff person. There's only so many manufacturers that can, do have the capabilities. We have competitors around the country, and we have the same capabilities, except we may be a lot smaller, but the same capabilities. So we're unique in a sense that we do have all the capabilities as maybe a company that's 3 times as large as us. They just might have more machines, but they're not any better, and their expertise is not any better than ours. They're just bigger. So we try to be the best that we can, and make products. If we can't make it well, then we're not going to make it at all. So we do that. We work closely with both the distributor type of customer, and also we do have OEMs that we work with. So it's always a challenge. But again, there are organizations that are out there that help create and keep the specifications. So you have NEMA and other organizations and SEA that are out there with electrical apparatuses that they help control the specifications. So we are involved in those on every, they have meetings every 2 years and inter-meetings. So we're always involved in those just to make sure we're not missing any boats, as you said.
And when you're thinking about the cabling, is everything pretty much a different variation of the construction style? Like, what I mean by that is, you brought some samples, and I'm not going to profess to be a cable expert, very little, but it all looks like some type of sort of twisted metal on the inside with different shielding, of which I'm sure it has all different capabilities. But how do you think about what would happen if they started going to fiber optic as opposed to using metal or different types of metal? It looks like copper mostly in here. I don't know if that's accurate, but.
Right. Well, there's certain things I know sometimes they have electrical ribbons that you can put, you can use. But again, from an aircraft and with the power needs that are in there, like fiber optics are only used for signal cables. So you can't use those for power cables. And as like you were just mentioning, a lot of ours are nickel-plated copper or silver-plated copper or nickel alloys or silver alloys or whatever metal it may be, depending on the applications, that those are really hard to replace. even with technology, just because of the power attributes that are needed.
So so are these mostly then power cables as opposed to signal cables? So this isn't necessarily the cable I would use when you talk about like fly-by-wire, sending the signal from the joystick to, move whatever it moves. We're not talking about that. This is more on the power end of the.
Yeah. So anything that's large is a power cable, one faster or another. Right. There's electrical current going through there.
Right. Thus the shielding and all that.
The shielding. Yes. Mm-hmm. So everything that we do is really to keep the single wires protected. So you can over braid them and put a braid on top of the wire and shield it with a metal braid and put PTFE tape on it for fluid resistance. So there's always a reason of what you put on those single wires to keep the current flowing through them. And like I said, in an aircraft, there's certain products that we'll make that will handle 2,000 degrees for over 5 minutes to make sure if there's an engine fire, which happens
in
aircraft, that's why there's, aircraft are able to fly, because the products are engineered for those type of,
like black swan type events or
exactly
events. You got to make sure that they're. Right. So when you think about innovation at Specialty Cable, like where do you guys spend your time thinking about innovating? Is it in process? Is it in like technology in terms of how you build? Is it like, because it sounds like the specifications of the cables and stuff more comes from the designers with a little bit of help from you guys, or tell me about sort of the innovation when you think about staying relevant.
Yeah, a lot of our innovation is exactly that. Again, as a smaller company, you always need to be viable and profitable. Mm-hmm. So with that, you need to keep on streamlining, stay lean, do all your 5 S's and all that fun stuff to make sure you don't have any foreign object debris in anything, and make sure you have a safe environment, and keep ourselves relevant against larger competitors and all that fun stuff. So a lot of our innovation has gone into quality purposes to make sure, again, we all fly.
Yes.
There's a reason why you want a high quality product when you're making that product for it. So we make sure we have higher quality assurance. It gives us less scrap. It makes the product just better and easier to handle, and just makes everyone's job easier too. So we can produce more with less and continue that facet. So
do you try and do that yourself? Do you guys partner with outside help to try and find ways to drive lean? Like, how do you think about maximizing the process benefits?
We do. We do look for help. We use Constep a tremendous amount to help guide us in certain directions. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We know people who know where it is.
That's right.
We'll utilize
they know the size, the shape, the placement.
Exactly. Well, again, we use UConn School of Engineering with their program, their outreach program with companies. So they've done a lot of testing for us when we try new products between.
We talked a lot about that program. Why don't you kind of share more about it? Because it has not been something that's come up a lot on the show, and I don't know how many people know about it or take advantage of it. So why don't you give us some of the details?
Yeah. Gee, I forget the exact name that UConn uses for that.
Start thinking the same thing.
So I apologize for that. But no, the UConn School of Engineering with their material applied science, there's a program that there's an outreach with Connecticut companies and other companies too, not only in Connecticut, that you can use their labs, you use their graduates, and we would take samples of what we make and say, here, we want you to test this, just to see whatever, especially the, some of the properties of sintering PTFE. Mm-hmm. We want to know which one's better, or comparing vendor products to make sure vendor A is just as good as vendor B, or vendor C is better than both of them, and vice versa. So we've used that extensively when we were looking at our new product development for new QPL products that are very similar. Like you were saying before, I always say it's like Baskin Robbins. We do 100 different flavors of wire, but it's still wire.
Right.
It's wire
still
and
ice
cable.
cream, exactly. Right. And so how does the program, so people understand how the program works, you help them do that, and then you pay them, they do it for you. Talk about that.
Yeah.
What's the benefit?
Yeah, you pay an annual fee, and it all depends on the size of the company, and you can use them for your research. I mean, they have their grad students with all the coolest of equipment
Yes.
that many smaller companies or mid-sized companies may or may not be able to afford, or you don't want to because you're only going to use it twice a year. So it's from a financial aspect, it's more than worth it to use the equipment that's there. And now that they built their brand new science center, though hopefully I'll be visiting that next month.
Nice. Yeah, look, I think that's great. And I'm really glad that you brought it up, because it is something that I don't think enough people really take advantage of. Is, we've got some great resources, whether it's UConn, University of Hartford, any of the, the Connecticut schools, Central, Eastern, Southern. There's so many opportunities to be able to leverage some of those students and their capabilities. And I don't think enough companies take advantage of it. So it's cool to see you guys doing that. Do you find, does that help in your recruiting pipeline at all? Do you able to recruit out of UConn, or is that not really
We haven't recruited yet out of UConn. We did have some interns come in. So it was actually really great, because they did some case studies and intern projects. And they came in, looked at specialty cable, and they come up with better ideas to look. And I interviewed them, and they interviewed me and our engineering staff. And that was a great project, because they actually were really good.
Yes, they are good.
They're very good.
Yeah, because it was one of those 16 or 8 weeks or whatever it is, those graduate where they come in, there's a specific scope of the project, and then it comes out with a deliverable.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's another great way to kind of leverage that knowledge and skills to help a business when you can't afford your own R&D department or don't want to have it all the time.
Exactly.
That's great. What about from a technology standpoint? I mean, how are you guys looking at, it's a business it's been around for a long time. How do you guys think about leveraging Industry 4.0 or any new technology in the business?
Well, we're looking as we speak for a new ERP system, so fully integrated, which we have one today, but it's an older system, works well for us, but all lifespans come to an end. Mm-hmm. So as that's starting to come to an end, we are looking at one as we speak. So within the next couple of weeks, we'll have a full ERP system, fully integrated between the shop floor, much more than we have now. So we're really looking at that. There are the modules that you can connect the machines to the modules. So as we kind of continue our road into that, and as we implement more and more, we should be more and more integrated from that aspect, from cradle to grave, beginning to end.
Right. When you think about why it was time to get a new ERP and the value that you're going to get out of it from the CEO level, what were some of the triggers that you saw that said it's time to do something different?
Again, it's very similar to your other question of how do you stay relevant?
Yeah.
Technology has come a long way with systems. You don't need to go from a menu-driven aspect. So again, your admin time could be cut down, so much more. You can get a lot more information much faster. And that's really what we do. And the use of information today, again, knowledge is power. Mm-hmm. So the more we know what we do, the better we can operate our business and just be more competitive overall.
So really sounds like a strategic effort that says, look, there's not there's something that's broken today. It's just, we know we've got to continue to invest to stay relevant. This is an area you looked at it and said, if we squeeze, there's enough juice here to make it worth our while. Let's squeeze and see what comes out the other end.
There you go. Well said.
Wow. Well, I absolutely love it. You're doing a lot of military stuff, so I got to imagine that you guys are kind of running into NIST, CMMC compliance items. How are you guys thinking about that? How are you taking steps to address that?
Also, I think like you were just saying, with the new ERP system, it should make things even better. Mm-hmm. So we've been on that path, and we've had our benchmarks, and we continue to improve. So we are there, and we just need to continue it. And, originally at first I was like, what's this? Another requirement that we need to do. Mm-hmm. But if you really look at it, everything makes sense to do. I mean, it's kind of like a guideline that you should just follow.
I'm really happy to hear you say that. I've been preaching that for years. I get it. There's a lot of things out there that you're doing it and you're just going, this makes no sense. I just feel like I'm checking a box for somebody, but don't see the value. And maybe in part because I understand so much under the hood of what goes on when it comes to CMMC and that type of compliance. You read through it and it's just like a makes sense type of a list that if you just want to have good cyber hygiene, good network connectivity, there's nothing in there that doesn't make sense to do. And it's nice to have a roadmap and a guidepost and check marks to make sure you're doing the right things and understand where you get to. And it sounds like that already connected for you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's when you read, it's like, wow, are we doing this? No, why not?
Yes.
Or we are, but not really as good as we should. I'm like, okay, great. It's good to know. Good
Right.
to know where you're at. If you don't know where you're at, how do you know where you're going?
How do you know where you're going? Yeah, which is so funny, right? Because it's such a to me, like an obvious thing in manufacturing. Like, people that have to make something know you got to follow the checklist, you got to follow a process, and you got to get to the other end. And skipping steps, while it may seem convenient at the beginning, isn't seem very good at the end when everything's failing QC and getting sent back to the beginning, right?
Exactly. Yes. Like I said, we're AS9100 certified, and very to that point, it's like ISO on steroids.
Yep.
But it's been great for us. Like you said, sometimes it's easier to kind of take shortcuts, but if you continue to take shortcuts, you know what's going to happen in the end. So that's been a great thing for us too. So they're great guidelines. They're all great guidelines to follow, and makes you better for it.
Yeah, that's awesome. What do you kind of see? What do you see sort of in the future? What's sort of the next phase? Specialty cables, like 80 years old. What's sort of the next? What do you see in the future as you look into the horizon?
Well, we can never predict the future.
No, that's a fair point.
Again, we are one of the smallest companies with what we do. We've been very successful at it, and the plan right now is still continue that path, organically grow, and if other opportunities come along, we're always looking to see what happens there. So it's pretty much steady as we go.
How do you compete? Well, I was going to move on at that point, but it's my last question, but now you got one more. So interesting, you're not the only Connecticut manufacturer who's, looks around and feels like the David in a world of Goliaths. And as industry consolidation happens, it's more and more the case in more areas. How do you think about staying competitive and relevant in that environment where you are the David?
Well, it's always a good question. We ask ourselves that every day. Again, part of it is, we as every manufacturer, I'm sure that you've talked to, that we've all worked for, employees are the key. Until everyone could be a fully automated company, you still have employees.
That's right.
We are, luckily for us, we're not part of a conglomerate that only has a bottom line driven, and that we are able, if there is some storms, especially in the aerospace business, which we know that there always are every few years or something, we can still stay steady as we go. So we can take a little dip. We do not have to lay everybody off because the bottom line is suffering a little bit. And that has really helped us. I mean, sometimes during the worst times of within our industry, we've performed the best. And that obviously converts to our customer base by our performance, by our products, and that is lasting. So even when things bounce back and the Goliaths come back up again, we've been grounded within the or ingrained within the business aspect. So it's not easy to get rid of us too.
Do you feel like there's a benefit from just a relationship standpoint that, relationships still do matter, and having a smaller organization that, really gets to know your customers and can maybe pivot a little bit faster to their needs and be more responsive and have those deeper relationships? Do you find that helps you from a retention perspective?
Absolutely. That's actually one of our key points as a business, second to none customer service. Because you can't forget about it today because of emails and everything's by email today. But we still strive for that. And it's worked well for us. I mean, you do break through the veil of just, numbers, like I said. So it's a huge proponent for our business.
Yeah, listen, I mean, the human touch is always there. Something I was thinking about through as we were sort of, COVID was running out and people were saying, oh, it's, travel's never going to come back. Everything's by Zoom. And I just think we, as people, crave that like real personal touch. And the funny thing is, as we started traveling again and started having meetings in person again, we always do what worked, what didn't work when meetings are over. And every meeting, one of the what worked is that we actually got together and did it together. And that's just a sign to me that whether it's, email, text messaging, LinkedIn chat or whatever, ultimately at the end of the day, being able to shake someone's hand and having a presence is a differentiator that can make a difference if you can find a way to break through.
Agreed.
Amen to that. All right. Well, listen, I'm going to rip us over to rapid fire round of questions. We'll wrap this up. You ready, Kim?
Sure.
All right, man. Red Sox or Yankees?
Red Sox.
Dunkin' or Starbucks?
Starbucks.
Staycation or exotic destination?
Sounds like an exact destination.
That's right. iPhone or Android?
iPhone for sure.
Sports car or SUV?
SUV.
If you had to do something other than be CEO of Specialty Cable, and it could be anything in the whole world, what would you do with your time?
I'd be an ice cream man at the beach.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a really good one. Popular guy, the ice cream man at the beach.
Exactly.
Do you have a favorite business book?
I can't remember the name right now, but the answer is yes.
It is. All right. Well, email us. We'll get it to our, add it to our list. Kim, what's something that you learned early in your life or earlier in your career that you think's helped propel you to all the success that you've had?
Wow. There's just too many lessons that I have learned.
Pick one good one. Let's get a nugget out there.
Do what you feel is right.
I like that. Do what you feel is right. What's something, Kim, that you learned later in your life or later in your career that if you could go back and tell your young self, and if he'd listened to you, would have a real positive impact on him?
Don't sweat the small stuff.
Don't sweat the small stuff. I absolutely love it. Kim, you have been an excellent, tremendous guest. Really, really appreciate you spending the time, and wishing you and Specialty Cable and everybody over there all the best.
Thank you again. Thanks. I appreciate you having me.
Made in America with Ari Santiago is brought to you by Compass MSP.
Thanks for listening and spending some time with me today. My goal is to help build a strong manufacturing community, and it would be impossible to do without all of you.